Hello, tomato growers. This is Ray Kruse, your tomato growing mentor. And it is July 7th, 2020, and things are looking up. Our tomatoes are growing, and they're growing up the trellis, and it is looking great. So what we've done since you've seen this last is we have added some more twines to our trellis here. So you saw me add the first twine here at the bottom, and what we've done is we've added 2 more twines since, and our tomatoes are obviously continually growing up the trellis at the time. They are a little behind for what I like to see at this time of the year, but I'm still not too worried about it. What I will say is whether you have a cage system of trellising or the twines like we have here, what you need to do is you need to continually tuck in your branches of tomatoes that keep popping through the lower areas of the strings, just so that when fruit does get on those branches, it doesn't pull them over and kink them and things like that once we get fruit on them. So it's a good way to keep them inside that trellis so they can keep growing up. Now, we have done a lot of effort in trying to stave off or hold off our diseases that commonly are threats to our tomatoes here in Northeast Iowa, and they are septoria leaf spot, early blight, and late blight. And what we've done is we have spaced our tomatoes 3 feet apart to ensure that we get enough good air circulation around our plants so that they have enough airflow to help reduce the chance of disease. We've also put down mulch on the ground to help avoid any soil splash that might contain disease onto those leaves. And if you happen to have some of the hybrid tomatoes growing, they naturally have some disease resistance as part of their genetic package. They're not genetically modified, but they're bred to resist some diseases. Now, our heirloom Brandywine Reds don't have that disease resistance. And between all these practices here of trying to hold off disease, we still see disease early in the season. And we just try our best to continually hold them off. And here's a good example of what we're seeing. So normally I see septoria leaf spot, and what that is it looks like our leaf has a bunch of polka dots on it, and eventually the leaf will just die. And you'll see all these little dead little polka dots on it. Now, I'm not seeing that yet on these tomatoes, but I am seeing something called early blight. And here is a good example of that. So right here, if I can get the sunlight right in the photo, you can see it right there. And what's inside the dead spot on that leaf there are little itty bitty rings on that dead spot. And so that's very characteristic of early blight. And there's a third disease called late blight that we commonly get on our tomatoes here. And it's a little harder to tell until the later stages of the disease. And what happens is, if you imagine this dead spot here being late blight, what'll happen is there'll be white threads that'll grow from the dead spot on there when it rains out or it gets extremely, extremely humid, even more humid than what we're seeing right now in July. So those are the 3 diseases. Now, like I said, not super worried about this yet. Last year in our tomato cultivar trial that we did with the master gardeners, this cultivar, this Brandywine Red, happened to get some disease earlier in the year. Then once it set fruit, seemed to hold the disease off, which really surprised me. Person wouldn't expect that, because usually once you get fruit on the plant, it usually taxes the plant enough to where it becomes more susceptible to disease. But that was just something that was interesting from these Brandywine Reds that were noted last year. Something that you can also do if you're seeing disease early in the season is apply a fungicide. And a common fungicide that is applied and easily available to gardeners is something called chlorothalonil, which is the technical name, or something called Decanol. You can get it at most of your farm stores. I would say observe the label directions, but it is what most of our gardeners apply in our area for tomato diseases. And if you were to get it, I would say get it early, because it does normally sell out later in the year. But with that, I hope your tomatoes are growing awesomely and that they're looking just as wonderfully as mine are too. So with that, this is your tomato growing mentor, Ray Kruse. Happy growing, everybody.